Have you ever stopped to think about what it really takes to build something so legendary it's still being talked about thousands of years later? I mean, we're not just talking about stacking stones and cutting wood. Today, we are peeling back the layers on one of history's most famous buildings, King Solomon's Temple. This is the incredible, untold story of the diplomacy, the massive international trade, and the absolutely staggering logistics behind it all.
So, right off the bat, here's the big question. How do you even begin to build a wonder of the ancient world? Imagine you're a new king, you've got this divine mission, but you don't actually have the right materials or the expert labor. Where do you even start? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is a total masterclass in ancient project management.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Meet King Solomon. He's just taken the throne from his very famous father, King David, and along with that crown, he inherits a sacred duty to build a magnificent temple for God. This was a task, you see, that his father was actually forbidden from completing himself.
And this right here, this is the key to the whole story. It's from Solomon's own message. See, David was a warrior king. His whole life, his whole reign, was defined by conflict and war. He was the one who built the kingdom, but that very act of bloodshed meant he couldn't be the one to build the holy house. That monumental task had to fall to the next generation, a generation of peace.
And this is where Solomon's era is completely different from his father's. He inherits a kingdom that's finally at peace. The text literally says God gave him rest on every side. Now, this isn't just a nice break from fighting. This peace is the essential ingredient, the absolute requirement for the mission to even begin. This period of stability opens up the perfect window to take on a building project of truly epic proportions.
But here's the thing. Peace alone isn't enough. Solomon's kingdom, as powerful as it was missing two absolutely critical resources: the legendary cedars of Lebanon and, just as important, the know-how to harvest them. So, what does he do? He does what any smart leader would. He turns to diplomacy and asks for help.
And the person he reaches out to is this man, King Hiram of Tyre. Now, what's really fascinating here is the history between them. Hiram wasn't some random king. He had always been on friendly terms with David. So Solomon isn't starting from scratch. He's cashing in on a generational alliance, a foundation of trust that his own father had built years before.
And just look at how skillfully Solomon makes his request. It's so direct, but at the same time, it's incredibly respectful. He doesn't just demand the wood. He flat out says, "You know that we have no one as skilled as your people." He acknowledges that Hiram's subjects, the Sidonians, are the undisputed experts. It's a brilliant mix of honesty and diplomatic flattery. And you know what? It works. It works perfectly. Hiram is reportedly greatly pleased and agrees right away. And he doesn't just say yes. He says he will do everything Solomon wants. This just goes to show how strong that old friendship was and how effective Solomon's smart, humble approach really was.
Now let's be clear about this. This wasn't some informal agreement over a handshake. The records tell us that the two kings made a formal treaty. This was a legitimate international agreement, turning a personal, friendly alliance into an official state-level partnership for this one grand project.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of this massive deal. A treaty is one thing, but what were the actual terms? What was Solomon trading for all of this priceless, legendary timber?
And this table lays it out perfectly. It was a massive but surprisingly simple barter deal. Solomon, who ruled a rich agricultural kingdom, would send the huge annual payment of food for Hiram's entire royal household. We're talking 20,000 cores of wheat and 20,000 baths of the finest pressed olive oil every single year. And in return, Hiram would supply all the priceless cedar and juniper woods Solomon could ever need.
Now for the really cool part, the logistics. Hiram himself comes up with the whole plan. His expert crews would do the hard work, cutting the trees in the mountains, hauling them down to the sea, and then tying them into these giant rafts to float them down the coast. All Solomon had to do was have his guys waiting at the designated drop-off point to pick them up. It was a brilliantly efficient supply chain.
So the international lumber deal is set. The timber is secured, but this project needed so much more than wood. Now Solomon had to turn inward and mobilize his own nation. And the sheer scale of the human effort involved is, well, it's just mind-boggling.
Let's just start with this number, 30,000. King Solomon conscripted, or drafted, 30,000 of his own people into forced labor. Yeah, this was not a volunteer project. This was a national mandate.
But even this forced labor was incredibly organized. He didn't just send all 30,000 guys off at once. He set up this brilliant rotation system. 10,000 men would go work in Lebanon for 1 month, and then they'd get 2 full months back at home with their families. For a long-term project like this, it was a pretty sustainable, if demanding, system.
But those 30,000 men in the rotation, they were just the beginning. On top of that group, Solomon assigned another 70,000 men to be carriers. Just think about that for a second. An army of people whose entire job, day after day, was to haul materials.
And then add another 80,000 men whose job it was to cut stone in the hills. So let's just pause and do the math here. We've got 30,000 loggers, 70,000 carriers, and 80,000 stone cutters. That is a workforce of 180,000 conscripted laborers from Israel alone. That is the size of a massive ancient army, all focused on one single building. And who was in charge of this colossal workforce? That job fell to 3,300 foremen. Their only responsibility was to supervise the whole operation and keep all those workers on task.
So what exactly were these thousands of stonecutters doing? Well, at the king's command, they were quarrying enormous, high-grade blocks of stone. This wasn't just any old rock. This was the best of the best, specifically chosen for the temple's foundation, a base that was meant to last for eternity.
So when you put it all together, what you have is this truly international collaboration. You've got Solomon's huge conscripted workforce doing the heavy lifting, you've got Hiram's expert lumberjacks from Tyre, and the text even mentions specialized craftsmen from another city, Byblos, all working side by side to prepare the timber and the stone. And so that brings us here. The temple became this enduring symbol of faith and wisdom, a true wonder of the ancient world. But as we've seen, behind that beautiful golden legend, there's a much more complex story. It's a story of shrewd politics, massive economics, and the forced labor of nearly 200,000 people. It's a powerful reminder that even the most sacred legacies are built with human hands. And it really makes you wonder, what is the true cost of creating something meant to last forever?